Welcome to Whispers of Asia, where the most chilling legends, spiritual mysteries, and urban hauntings from across the continent come alive in the dark. Tonight, you're invited to board a midnight city bus in the heart of Jakarta, Indonesia, a journey where the line between the living and the lost is as thin as a strip of funeral cloth. This is a story of wandering spirits and cold hands pressed against fogged windows, a ride where silence is never empty. If you've ever heard the legend of the last passenger, hold your breath, because the moment you feel a damp, icy hand on your shoulder, you'll never know for certain, are you still the driver or just another ghost waving farewell from the back of the bus? Prepare yourself for The Last Passenger's Hand, a dark, spiritual horror rooted in Indonesian folklore, where the curse always waits for someone at the end of the line. Jakarta after midnight is not the city you think you know. Gone are the horns, the endless shouts, the rush of life beneath neon lights. The air feels heavier, as if the smog has settled into the bones of the streets. The markets have gone dark, the skyscrapers are shadows. Only the orange glow of old street lamps lingers above empty roads, and the distant hum of a city that never truly sleeps becomes something softer, something almost mournful. On one forgotten avenue, a city bus idles at its first stop. Its headlights slice through the damp night air. The old metal sides are streaked with rain from an earlier storm. A faint smell of gasoline and wet asphalt drifts around the bus, mixing with the cloying sweetness of street flowers crushed under the tires. Inside, the seats are empty, except for the driver and his new conductor. The driver, Pak Darman, is a man carved from Jakarta's old world. His hair is silver and his hands steady, though his eyes dart too often to the rearview mirror. Next to him sits Arif, young and still eager, gripping his ticket puncher with both hands. Tonight is Arif's first time working the midnight line. He has heard rumors of this route, about the last stop, about the rules that cannot be broken, but he pretends he does not believe. The bus doors hiss open, inviting no one in. Pak Darman mutters, "Midnight is not for the living, Arif. On this shift, you keep your eyes forward. No matter what you hear or see behind you, you never look back." Arif laughs softly, but his voice is thin. He tries to sound brave. "Is this just a ghost story, Pak?" The old man does not answer. They begin their journey. The streets pass in silent procession. Sleeping warongs, alleys littered with fallen offerings, shadows pressed tight against shuttered shops. The bus is empty for several stops, each one more deserted than the last. Now and then a lone passenger boards, a tired worker, a woman clutching a shopping bag, an old man with tired eyes. Each sits near the front, never daring to venture to the back row. Arif stamps their tickets, eyes flickering to the rear, catching only darkness. Once, he thinks he sees movement, a shape slipping across the last seat, pale in the gloom, but when he blinks, it is gone. They reach the last stop. Pak Darman slows the bus and checks his watch, waiting for a minute that feels longer than any hour. No one boards. No one should. This is the end of the line. But as the doors close, the air turns colder. A thin mist creeps along the aisle, swirling around Arif's feet. The city outside seems to disappear, leaving only the rumble of the engine and the whisper of something unseen behind them. Pak Darman's voice is barely more than a breath. "Midnight is not for the living, Arif. On this shift, you keep your eyes forward. No matter what you hear or see behind you, you never look back. Arif's heart pounds in the silent dark. He tries to steady his breath. Outside, Jakarta fades away, and the bus carries them deeper into the midnight unknown. The journey has begun, and somewhere at the very back of the bus, a seat waits for its final passenger. The next night, Jakarta breathes a different air, thick, electric, alive with stories that never made it into the light. In the cramped break room behind the bus depot, Arif sits among a group of older men, each with tired faces carved by years and secrets. The room smells of black coffee and old tobacco. Rain taps at the window. A faded calendar hangs crooked on the wall, the dates marked by someone's shaky hand. Outside, the midnight buses line up like silent beasts, waiting for drivers who know the rules of the night. Pak Darman sits across from Arif, rolling a cigarette between his fingers. His voice, when he speaks, is rough with warning. You heard it last night, didn't you? The way the city changes after the last passenger boards. Arif hesitates. Maybe it was only a dream, or maybe it was the engine, or the cold, or his nerves playing tricks on him. But the unease sits in his chest like a stone. One of the older conductors leans in, his eyes dark and serious. There are rules here, boy. The midnight route is not like the others. You keep your head down. You never look in the rearview mirror after the last stop. And if someone pays you with a coin wrapped in white cloth, do not touch it, not even with gloves. Pak Darman nods slowly. His hands shake as he lights his cigarette. He looks at Arif as if searching for the right words, as if he wants to protect him and is not sure he can. Years ago, Darman begins, there was a driver named Surya, young, eager, just like you. One night, after the last stop, Surya caught a glimpse in his mirror, a woman sitting in the back row, face hidden behind a funeral veil. She did not speak, she only sat, silent as death. The old conductor interrupts, voice barely above a whisper. Surya tried to ignore her, but she reached the front, paid her fare with a coin tied in white cloth, and pressed it into his palm. By morning, Surya's hand had turned cold and gray. The mark never left him. Another man, older, nearly asleep, mutters, Surya was never the same. By the next new moon, he was gone. No one saw him again, except, some say, they glimpsed him waving from the back window of the midnight bus, his face pressed against the glass. Silence settles over the room. The only sound is the rain and the faint hum of fluorescent lights. Arif feels the fear curling inside him, cold and steady, a slow realization that this story is not for tourists, not for children, not for outsiders. He tries to laugh. Maybe it is only a story to scare the new guy, he says, voice shaking. But the older men do not laugh. Pak Darman only shakes his head. Before you board tonight, tie a red string around your wrist. Say a prayer, any prayer, before you open the doors. And remember, Arif, the last passenger is never who you think. As Arif rises to prepare for his shift, he catches his reflection in the window. The city lights blur behind his face. His own eyes seem older, as if some of the night's heaviness has already settled there. He steps out into the waiting dark, the rules and warnings echoing in his mind. Tonight, the bus will roll through Jakarta's midnight heart again, and Arif is not sure if he is ready for whatever waits in the shadows of the last stop.
The night air feels even heavier as Arif boards the bus. He can still hear the warnings of the old men ringing in his ears. The red string on his wrist is tight, almost cutting off his pulse, a small, silent promise of safety. Pak Darman is already behind the wheel, hands gripping the steering wheel with knuckles white as bone. Tonight, the city feels different. Shadows slide across the street like living things. Even the familiar sounds of traffic and distant music seem muted, dampened by something unseen. Arif shivers, though the night is warm. The first part of the route is uneventful. They stop for a group of late-night workers, a young couple arguing quietly, an old woman with groceries she clutches to her chest. Each takes a seat close to the front, eyes turned down, bodies tense and wary. No one glances at the back row. The unwritten rule of the midnight bus is simple: stay away from the final seat. As they pass through the empty business district, the bus grows quieter. The last passengers step off, one by one, until only Arif, Pak Darman, and the empty seats remain. The bus moves through a part of Jakarta where the street lights flicker and the alleys seem endless. Then, at a forgotten stop beneath a broken street lamp, the bus doors sigh open. A figure steps inside. She is draped in white from head to toe, a long faded shawl covering her hair, a dress trailing along the dirty floor. The fabric seems stained by rain and time. Her face is hidden, veiled by shadow. In her hands, she holds a small bundle wrapped in what looks like old white cloth. Without a word, she walks straight to the very back of the bus, each footstep slow and soundless. The only noise is the faint rustle of her fabric brushing the plastic seats. She sits in the farthest corner, staring out the window as if the darkness beyond has something to show her. Arif's heart hammers in his chest. He forces himself to look away, pretending to check the ticket machine, pretending he does not feel the sudden cold that floods the aisle. He can hear Pak Darman's breathing, shallow, fast, almost afraid. No one speaks. At the next stop, no one gets on. The city seems to have fallen away, leaving only the bus and the darkness outside. Arif tries to focus on his work, but he cannot shake the feeling that the woman at the back is watching him, even through her veil. Then he notices something strange. His hands, resting on his lap, begin to tingle with a numb chill. He clenches his fists, rubs them together, trying to restore the warmth, but the sensation lingers, crawling up his arms like the mist outside. A metallic sound breaks the silence. Arif glances in the mirror and sees her pale hand placing the small white bundle on the empty seat beside her. He looks away quickly, fear rising in his throat. Remembering the warnings, he resists the urge to check the rearview mirror again. Pak Darman whispers, low and trembling, "Do not turn around." The bus keeps rolling through the empty city. Outside, the rain begins again, soft, relentless, washing away the lights, the roads, the world itself. And in the very back, the last passenger waits, silent, as the cold creeps slowly forward. The rain drums louder on the roof as the bus moves deeper into the sleeping city. Inside, every sound is amplified. The hum of the engine, the creak of the old suspension, the occasional rattle of loose coins in Arif's pocket. Arif tries to keep his mind busy, counting the stops, checking the time, glancing at the numbers on the digital dashboard. but his thoughts are restless, circling back to the stranger in white at the back of the bus. Each time he risks a quick look down the aisle, the woman seems utterly still. Only the pale fabric of her dress moves, shifting slightly with the vibrations of the road. Sometimes Arif thinks he hears her whispering, but when he listens closer, the sound dissolves into the rain. They reach the end of the line, a narrow, deserted intersection where the city's lights barely touch the cracked pavement. Pak Darman pulls the bus to a stop and leaves the engine running. The headlights shine on nothing but puddles and shadows. It's time for the final fare. Arif stands up, his legs unsteady, and walks slowly down the aisle, ticket puncher in hand. The closer he gets to the back, the colder the air feels. Each breath is laced with a sharp chill, stinging his lungs. He stops 2 seats away from the woman. For a moment, neither of them move. Then, in one smooth motion, she turns and holds out the bundle in her hands, a coin wrapped in old, yellowed funeral cloth. Her hands are impossibly thin, the skin almost translucent. The coin glimmers dully in the bus's flickering light. The fabric is stained, edges fraying, marked with strange symbols drawn in faded red ink. Arif hesitates, remembering the warnings. Never accept coins wrapped in white cloth. But her hand remains outstretched, unwavering, the coin balanced on her palm. He tries to refuse, shaking his head, but the woman does not react. Instead, her other hand rises, trembling, and she places it gently on his arm. The contact is electric, cold, wet, as if her touch draws the warmth from his body in a single instant. A wave of nausea rolls through him, and his knees almost buckle. "Take it!" Her voice is a whisper that somehow fills the bus, echoing off the windows and the steel frame. It is not a command, but a plea, desperate and mournful. Arif's fingers close around the bundle, almost against his will. The cloth is damp, heavy, and the coin inside is colder than ice. He tries to let go, but his hand won't obey. The woman lets go and settles back into her seat, her face still hidden behind the veil. Arif stumbles back to the front, heart pounding, hands shaking. He drops the bundle onto the dashboard and wipes his palm on his pants, trying to banish the cold that seeps into his bones. Pak Darman glances at him, his face ashen. "You took it," he whispers, not accusing, just afraid. The rain beats harder, the city swallowed by shadows. The bus doors hiss open, but the only passenger to leave is the woman in white, her footsteps vanishing into the mist. As the doors close and the bus pulls away, Arif looks at his palm. A faint wet handprint is spreading across his skin, a mark that will not wash away. The night has changed him, and somewhere in the echoing silence, he wonders if he has just inherited someone else's fate. Morning comes slowly to Jakarta, gray and swollen with rain. Arif wakes in his cramped boarding room to the muffled sounds of scooters, street vendors, and the steady patter of water against the window. He blinks in the dim light, unsure for a moment if he's truly awake or still trapped somewhere inside the nightmare of the night before. His body aches with a chill that no blanket can touch. He pulls himself out of bed, feeling heavy and old. When he glances at his right palm, his breath catches in his throat. There, etched into the skin, is a pale handprint. It glistens faintly in the morning gloom, damp, almost sticky to the touch, as if someone has pressed a cold, wet hand onto his own and left part of themselves behind. He scrubs at it with soap and water until the skin is raw and stinging, but the mark remains, stubborn and vivid. Every time he moves, the handprint tingles, sending cold pulses up his arm. He tries to ignore it as he prepares for the day, splashes his face, buttons his uniform, checks his phone for messages. But every small task is haunted by the chill crawling up his fingers. Outside, the city feels unchanged, bustling, noisy, chaotic. Yet Arif senses something wrong. People bump past him on the crowded street, but no one seems to notice the strangeness in his eyes, the way he flinches when anything brushes his arm. He tries to eat breakfast at a stall by the depot, but his food tastes bland and unfamiliar. The other conductors gather around a battered table playing cards and trading gossip, but their laughter sounds distant to him, hollow and far away. Pak Darman arrives, eyes ringed with exhaustion. He sits beside Arif in silence. For a long moment, neither man speaks. Finally, Arif holds out his hand. The mark is even clearer in the morning light, fingers splayed, the palm broad, as if the hand belonged to someone older, larger, not quite human. Pak Darman draws in a slow, shaky breath. "You tried to wash it, but it will not go," he murmurs. His gaze drifts to the bundle of white cloth Arif still carries, wrapped tightly in his jacket pocket. Arif's voice trembles. "What happens now?" Pak Darman's answer is quiet, and it chills Arif more than the handprint itself. "Now you wait and you pray. If the legends are true, the mark is only the beginning. What comes after is worse." Arif shivers. All day the chill remains in his bones. He finds himself staring at his own hands, willing them to stay still, to obey him, to be his. But as the sun sets and the city glows gold and red, Arif feels the cold spread deeper, into his wrists, his arms, the center of his chest. Shadows stretch across his room, and somewhere in the distance he hears the echo of a bus horn, long, low, mournful. He closes his eyes and feels the damp imprint pulsing with every beat of his heart. Something is changing, something has begun. And as night returns to Jakarta, Arif wonders how long he has left before the handprint is all that remains of him. Night comes again, thick and suffocating. In the narrow quiet of his room, Arif sits by the window, afraid to sleep, afraid to let his eyes close even for a moment. The city's glow outside is distant, flickering behind sheets of rain. Every so often, the headlights of a passing car sweep across his wall, casting long, ghostly shadows that seem to move on their own. He cannot stop staring at his hands. The handprint on his palm is no longer pale and faint. Now it is stark, swollen, the outline of each finger deepening as if inked beneath his skin. It feels cold all the time, as if frost is clinging to his flesh. He tries to flex his fingers, to prove they still belong to him, but the joints are stiff, protesting every movement. It gets worse after midnight. At first, it's only a dull ache, the kind he imagines old men feel in their bones during a storm. Then the cold intensifies, a sharp, gnawing chill that crawls up his arm and settles in his shoulder. Arif wraps his hands in towels, holds them over the electric heater, but the numbness will not go. When he looks in the mirror, his face is pale, eyes sunken and restless. He avoids the sight of his right hand, but even when he hides it behind his back, the cold lingers in his veins. He tries to sleep, curling tightly under his blanket, but dreams do not come. Only flashes, Fleeting images of the midnight bus, the empty city, the veiled woman at the back, the glint of the funeral coin. He hears whispers behind him, breath that chills his neck. He feels the weight of a hand pressing down on his shoulder, pulling him backward into darkness. He wakes with a gasp, sweat beading on his forehead. His right hand dangles over the side of the bed, fingers twitching, as if something is tugging them from below. For a moment he cannot move. He watches in frozen horror as his right hand curls inward, the knuckles popping, the fingers bending into unnatural shapes, then relaxing again, as if nothing happened. Throughout the day, the changes become harder to ignore. His grip is weak, his handwriting unsteady. He knocks over his glass, drops his keys, struggles to button his shirt. The hand seems less and less his own. Pak Darman visits after his shift, sitting on the edge of his bed, silent and sorrowful. He sees the mark, sees the swelling, and sighs, voice weighed down by old regrets. "Did you dream last night?" he asks. Arif nods, unable to speak of the cold, of the whispers, of the sense that someone else is living inside his skin. "You must not let the night have you," Pak Darman warns. "Fight it while you can. Do not answer if you hear her voice. Do not let your hands move unless you command them." Arif tries to believe it is possible. He wraps his hand in cloth, ties the red string tighter, recites the prayers the old men taught him. But as the next midnight approaches, he feels the changes accelerating. A tingling in his fingers, a restless energy that will not be calmed. He sits in the darkness, staring at his hand, wondering what it will do when the city falls asleep, wondering how much longer he will remain himself before the cold, shriveled thing at the end of his arm belongs to someone or something else. And as the clock strikes 12, Arif feels a subtle tug deep inside his bones. The night is hungry, and his hands are the first to answer. Arif barely recognizes himself in the days that follow. His movements grow slower, clumsier, as if he is learning how to use his body all over again. Every evening, as the city's colors fade and the hush of midnight creeps in, the chill in his hand deepens. He hides his palm in his jacket pocket, ashamed of the mark that will not fade and the strange stiffness that now lingers in his joints. But the worst comes at night. It starts the same way each time, a dull ache in his fingers, followed by a restless tingling beneath his skin. He sits at his small desk, staring at the blank page of his notebook, trying to write something, anything, to prove to himself that his hand still obeys his mind. Yet the pen feels foreign, awkward between his trembling fingers. Then, without warning, his hand begins to move on its own. At first, it only taps the table or scratches meaningless lines in the margin of the page. But soon, his fingers curl around the pen with an unnatural strength, and his wrist guides the tip in looping, frantic strokes. The marks are not words, at least not any language Arif knows. Strange symbols fill the page, circular shapes, slashes, odd zigzags and spirals, repeating in patterns that make his head ache to look at. He tries to stop, tries to drop the pen, but his hand refuses. It is as if someone else is guiding him, pressing invisible fingers over his own, dragging out messages that do not belong in this world. When at last the fit passes, Arif is left shivering, sweat on his brow. He stares at the page in horror. The markings seem to shimmer, as if alive, as if they are staring back at him. He tears the sheet from his notebook and crumples it, but when he tries to throw it away, the cold in his palm sharpens, a silent, urgent warning not to destroy what has been written.
The next night, it happens again. This time, his hand moves to the window, tracing lines and shapes in the condensation on the glass. Outside, the city is silent. Only the faint glow of distant streetlights pierce the gloom. He watches as his fingers scrawl the same symbols across the fogged pane, and for a moment, he thinks he sees something moving in the reflection, a shadowy face, eyes pale and empty, watching him from the other side. He jerks his hand away, heart pounding. On the third night, the compulsion spreads beyond the page and the glass. He wakes to find his right hand pressing against the wall above his bed, fingers splayed wide as if trying to reach through to something hidden on the other side. The mark on his palm tingles, burning cold and sharp. Arif grows desperate. He tries to bind his hand, wrapping it tight in cloth, but the urge is too strong. Each time he wakes, he finds new markings on his sheets, on his skin, on the door. The symbols multiply, crawling across his room like an infection. One night, as he stands in the bathroom, Arif's hand lifts to the mirror and writes a single word in a language he does not know. He watches the letters form, slow and deliberate, until his arm drops, limp and exhausted. He stares at his reflection, the ghost of a man he used to be, and wonders if the messages are a warning or a summons. Outside, Jakarta continues its restless life, oblivious to the darkness growing in one small room. But Arif knows. The hand is no longer entirely his own, and the messages in the night are only the beginning.
Arif can no longer bear the solitude. The night has become an enemy, and the silence of his room is filled with scratching, twitching, and the ghostly marks left by his restless hand. Sleep brings no peace, only more symbols, more shadows, more of that cold, aching presence that now feels lodged deep in his bones. Desperate for answers, Arif seeks out the only people who might understand, the old drivers and conductors who linger at the depot between shifts, chain smoking beneath flickering lights, their voices lowered and wary. He finds Pak Darman first, sitting on a battered wooden bench at the edge of the parking lot. The night is heavy with humidity, the air thick with the scent of rain and cigarettes. Pak Darman watches the city buses come and go, his eyes never leaving the shimmering line of headlights on the road. Without waiting for Arif to speak, he says softly, "You're seeing things, aren't you? Hands that write what you don't remember? Whispers in the night? The mark growing colder every day." Arif nods, the words caught in his throat. Others gather around, 3, maybe 4 old men, their faces worn by worry and secrets. They exchange glances, then one begins to speak. "They call it the legend of the last passenger," he says. "For decades, that midnight route has been cursed. Always the same story. A woman in white boards the bus, silent and veiled. She sits at the back, pays with a coin wrapped in cloth from the grave, and leaves her mark on the living." Pak Darman's voice is grave. "No one knows who she was. Some say a widow who died on the way to her husband's funeral. Some say she was a spirit sent to collect the lost. But every few years the story repeats. The driver or conductor who accepts her fare finds the mark. Soon after, their hands act strangely. They write, they grasp at things, they reach out at night. And then, one day, the person vanishes. Some swear they've seen them waving from the back of the midnight bus, faces pale and lost. Another man leans in, eyes shining in the dark. "You're not the first, Arif. There were others before you.
Surya, who lost his mind, Pak Reza, who went missing, even a woman named Ita many years ago. All gone, none of them escaped the curse. Arif's voice is hoarse. Is there no way to break it? No way to return what she gave me? A heavy silence settles over the group. Only Pak Darman dares to answer. The only stories we have are those who tried. Some tried to burn the coin. Some tried to leave the city. Some begged priests and shamans for help. None of them made it far. The handprint never fades, and the spirit always finds you when you are alone. Arif feels the cold growing in his chest, tightening with each word. He pulls out the coin, still wrapped in the white funeral cloth, and shows it to the old men. They recoil, crossing themselves, muttering prayers. "Don't let her in," whispers one. "Don't answer if she calls. Don't ride the bus alone at midnight." But Arif knows it is too late for warnings. The mark is already part of him. The stories only confirm what he fears most. The curse is real, and he is running out of time. That night, as he leaves the depot, the buses loom like silent phantoms in the fog. Arif glances at his hand, feeling the restless energy stirring beneath the skin, and wonders if someone tomorrow will whisper his name as part of the legend, another soul claimed by the last passenger. The rain begins again, and Arif disappears into the night, hunted by a story that refuses to die. Arif's days shrink beneath the weight of his fear. He drifts through the city in a haze, his body present, but his mind always listening, waiting, watching for the next sign that the curse is tightening its grip. The mark on his hand grows colder. At times, he catches it moving, twitching, the fingers curling inward as if grasping at something invisible. He tries not to be alone, but loneliness finds him in the smallest moments, waiting for a bus, walking home beneath the broken glow of streetlights, lying awake while Jakarta's restless city heart pounds on. The stories of those who vanished replay in his thoughts, faces he never knew, waving from the back windows of midnight buses, eyes full of longing, hands pressed against the glass. Pak Darman calls Arif one evening and asks him to join for another shift on the midnight route. Maybe, Pak Darman hopes, if they face the darkness together, the spirit will keep her distance. Maybe not. Still, Arif cannot refuse. Something inside him whispers that running is useless. The only way out is through. The rain is falling hard when they set out. The city is quiet, sidewalks shining, alleys flooded, traffic lights blinking to no one. Arif sits near the front, clutching the bundle in his pocket, feeling the cold ooze up his arm. Pak Darman drives in silence, his eyes hard and fixed ahead, refusing to meet Arif's gaze in the mirror. For most of the route, nothing happens. The bus picks up a few weary passengers, shift workers, an old woman with a basket of fruit, a young man nodding off against the window. Each leaves before the end of the line, shuffling away into the rain, not once glancing at the back seats. As they approach the final stop, the air changes, the temperature drops. Mist curls along the floor of the aisle. Arif's hand throbs, fingers stiffening until he can hardly feel them. He tries to steady his breath, repeating old prayers beneath his breath. At the last stop, the doors slide open. A thin shape steps out of the mist. The woman in white climbs aboard, her veil trailing behind her, her feet silent on the wet metal floor. She passes Arif without a word, her presence colder than the rain, and sits at the back, her place, always at the very end. Pak Darman's knuckles whiten around the steering wheel. The bus doors close, the city vanishes beyond the windows, replaced by blackness,
and the shifting silver of falling rain. They wait, neither daring to speak, as the engine idles in place. Time stretches, warps, becomes meaningless. Suddenly the bus lurches forward, but the stops are gone. The familiar neighborhoods have disappeared. The roads twist, impossibly long, winding through endless dark. No buildings, no lights, just the whine of the engine and the soft, insistent sound of water hitting glass. Arif realizes with a jolt that the bus is not following any real route. The world outside has become dreamlike, indistinct, endless, eerily silent. He glances over his shoulder, catching the faint outline of the woman at the back. Through the gloom, he sees her raise her head, and for a heartbeat, he thinks she is staring straight through him. He looks away, fear spiking. His hand burns with cold, moving slightly of its own accord, tapping a rhythm on the seat that matches the sound of her breath. Soft, slow, inhuman. Pakdarman mutters, voice tight. "We're not on any map now, Arif. This is her world." Arif grips the bundle tighter, sweat and rain mingling on his skin. He understands at last what it means to take the endless ride. Once the spirit chooses her last passenger, there is no way back until the curse has run its course. Outside, the road loops endlessly, and somewhere in the distance, Arif hears the echo of 1,000 voices, lost, lonely, calling out for the dawn. The bus rolls on through the night, and Arif is left wondering how many more times the last passenger will claim a soul before the world remembers to be afraid. The rain finally fades, but the world outside remains empty. No houses, no shops, no sound except the steady grind of the bus's old engine. It feels as if the city has fallen away, as if the bus itself is floating through an endless gray fog. Arif presses his forehead to the cool glass, desperate for a sign that Jakarta still exists, but there is only mist and memory. Pakdarman drives in silence, face drawn and haunted. Every few minutes, his eyes flicker to the rearview mirror, but he never lets himself look long. Arif clutches his jacket around him, the weight of the funeral coin heavy in his pocket, the mark on his hand throbbing with a sickening chill. The woman in white sits motionless in the back seat, her veil untouched by time or weather. She does not move, but Arif feels her presence growing, expanding, filling the space with a sorrow so old and thick he can taste it. Suddenly, the bus shudders to a stop. The lights flicker. The engine groans as if refusing to go any further. Pakdarman turns to Arif, his voice barely more than a whisper. "Sometimes, if you want to escape a curse, you must first understand it. Who is she, Arif? What does she want?" Arif thinks of all the stories he's heard, the old men's warnings, the legends whispered at the depot. None of them have ever told the truth. He swallows hard and rises from his seat, the coin clutched in his trembling hand, and walks down the aisle. As he approaches, the cold intensifies, wrapping around him like a shroud. He stops a few feet from the woman, every instinct telling him to run. But he stands his ground and asks, as gently as he can, "Who are you? Why me? Why this bus?" The woman's head tilts slowly. Her voice emerges, soft and hollow, echoing as if from beneath the earth. "This was once my journey," she murmurs, "many years ago. I was to meet my husband at the last stop, but he never came. I waited and waited, but the bus never reached its end. There was an accident. No one found my body for days. My coin was meant to pay for my passage home, but no one would take it. I am still waiting for someone to finish the journey for me." The air grows colder, the sorrow heavier. Arif shivers, understanding now why the handprint on his skin feels so much like grief, why the marks he writes in the night seem like messages from the lost. He looks at the coin, wrapped in its faded shroud, and suddenly the symbols scrawled across his notebook and windows make sense. A map, a name, a plea to be remembered. Pakdarman steps into the aisle, his voice trembling. "Is there any way to set you free?" The woman's veil shivers, as if caught in a wind only she can feel. "There is always a price," she says. "Someone must take my place or carry my coin to the last stop, one that is not of this world." The lights on the bus flicker again, casting her figure in and out of shadow. Arif feels the weight of choice settling on his shoulders, the responsibility for a spirit trapped by unfinished sorrow, a curse that is passed down, passenger to passenger, for generations. Outside, the fog thickens, the bus doors rattle, the world waits. And Arif, holding the cold coin in his hand, wonders if he is strong enough to finish the journey for her, or if the curse will claim him too, leaving his own story buried in the mist. The bus sits in silence, surrounded by a fog so dense it feels like the world has vanished. Only the old lights overhead buzz quietly, their glow too weak to drive back the darkness. In the aisle, Arif stands with the funeral coin in his hand, the white cloth damp and cold, as if it still remembers the grave. Pakdarman watches from the front, silent, tense, his grip tight on the steering wheel. The air is charged with something ancient, a heaviness that presses against Arif's chest and makes his breath come shallow. The woman in white speaks again, her voice flowing like mist through the bus. "The coin must be returned," she says, "not just given. It must be carried with care and with memory. Only then can the journey end." Arif's mind races. He remembers the fragments of rituals he's heard about, offerings at crossroads, prayers for the dead, the tying of cloths around sacred stones. He thinks of his own childhood, of incense curling in the evening air and voices chanting for restless souls. Carefully, Arif unwraps the coin. The cloth smells faintly of earth and wilted flowers. He lays the bundle on the empty seat beside the woman, his hand shaking as he arranges it the way a mourner might leave an offering at a grave. The mark on his palm throbs, cold and urgent, as if the handprint itself is guiding him. He bows his head and whispers the prayers his grandmother taught him, words for lost spirits, for safe journeys, for peace in the next world. He closes his eyes, picturing the spirit's face, picturing her waiting and waiting on the edge of the world. For a long moment, nothing happens. Then the air shifts, a subtle change, a lifting of the suffocating weight. The fog outside the windows begins to move, swirling in slow circles, and the bus feels less like a tomb and more like a vessel poised for departure. Pakdarman rises, joining Arif in the aisle. He sprinkles holy water from a small vial over the coin and cloth, murmuring his own prayers. The droplets sizzle on the metal, and the scent of flowers fills the air. The woman in white raises her head. For the first time, Arif catches a glimpse of her face, pale, beautiful, and unbearably sad. Her eyes shimmer with longing and gratitude. "Thank you," she whispers. "Now, the last stop." She lifts the coin, pressing it gently to her chest. A glow, faint and silver, blooms around her hands. The mark on Arif's palm flares icy cold, then suddenly begins to fade, as if drawn away by the light. The bus engine stirs. The lights brighten. Outside, the fog unravels, revealing a narrow road lined with paper lanterns, their golden light flickering like spirits come to watch. Arif feels the cold lifting from his bones. The woman's veil falls away, her figure growing fainter, more transparent with each breath. Pakdarman turns to Arif,
hope flickering in his tired eyes. Perhaps this time the ritual has worked. Perhaps the curse will finally end. As the bus rolls forward toward the lantern-lit road, Arif clasps his healing hand and whispers one last prayer for the woman, for himself, and for all those still searching for their journey's end.
The bus glides forward, lanterns bobbing like will-o'-the-wisps in the shifting mist. Every window flickers with golden light, throwing trembling shadows on Arif's face. He watches the woman in white grow fainter with each passing moment, the spirit's sorrow slowly dissolving into relief. But just as the lantern-lit road stretches ahead, the lights inside the bus begin to flicker. One by one, bulbs pop and die, plunging the aisle into darkness. The engine coughs, shudders, and goes silent. The world collapses to the hush of breath, the slow tick of cooling metal, and the pulse of fear in Arif's throat. He looks for Pakdarman in the gloom, finds the old driver frozen in his seat, mouth open in shock. The last lanterns outside dim, smothered by a sudden surge of thick fog pressing against the windows. Even the road vanishes. There is only darkness, cold and infinite. Arif tries to move, but his legs feel weighed down by invisible hands. The mark on his palm, which moments before had faded to a mere shadow, now flares again, sharp, icy, more urgent than ever. His hand twitches, fingers splayed wide as if searching blindly for something lost. In the darkness, a voice rises, not the gentle whisper of the woman in white, but something older, deeper, echoing from the hidden places beneath the city. It is the sound of all the lost souls who have traveled this midnight route, all the unanswered prayers and unfinished journeys. The air pulses with their longing. Arif squeezes his eyes shut, willing himself not to answer, not to let the darkness in. Yet he feels his hand moving, guided by a force he cannot see, tracing circles and sigils on the seat before him. Cold sweat beads along his brow. All around him, the bus becomes a stage for shadows. Hands appear, reaching from beneath the seats, out of the windows, across the ceiling. Some are gnarled and ancient, others slender and delicate, all of them tinged with the same pale glow. They beckon to Arif, clawing for the warmth of the living. Pakdarman groans, clutching his own arms to his chest. "Don't answer them," he whispers, voice shaking. "Don't let them take you." The hands writhe and multiply, pressing cold against Arif's skin. He can barely breathe. His own hand is no longer his. He watches in horror as it presses itself to the glass, leaving a frostbitten print beside a dozen others. Outside, faces swim in the mist, pale and hollow-eyed, their mouths opening in silent cries. Then, through the suffocating dark, a faint silver glow returns. The woman in white stands before the bus's back door, holding the coin to her heart. She glides forward, every step unraveling the hands that reach for Arif, scattering the shadows like autumn leaves. With her touch, the cold in Arif's hand lessens. She meets his gaze one last time, her eyes full of ancient sadness and silent gratitude. "Thank you," she breathes, the words barely more than a sigh. The lanterns flare up outside, scattering the fog. The lights inside the bus flicker and return, feeble but growing stronger. The engine stirs, and Pakdarman exhales, trembling with relief. The shadows withdraw, leaving only the fading marks of hands on every surface. Arif slumps in his seat, drained but alive, his palm tingling with warmth as the handprint finally disappears. The journey, for now, is not over, but for the first time, Arif believes he has a chance to make it to the last stop, with the living
not the lost.
The bus rattles back to life, headlights spilling across the strange lantern-lined road that now seems both real and unreal. The fog peels away in thin sheets, revealing glimpses of shadowy figures drifting at the edge of sight, watchful, silent, as if waiting for a verdict. Pakderman eases the bus forward, his knuckles still white against the wheel. He glances at Arif, searching his face for any sign of strength. Arif nods weakly, his body exhausted but his mind alert, tuned to every subtle tremor of the bus and the world outside. The woman in white stands at the back, her outline shimmering with a ghostly light, both present and fading. As the bus rolls through the veil of lanterns, a heavy silence settles, thick, expectant, as if all those lost spirits are holding their breath. It is Pakdarman who finally breaks the silence. If her journey is ending, whose begins? His words hang in the air like a chill. Suddenly, Arif remembers the old legends, that the curse can only be broken if another takes her place, that the last passenger is a title passed on, not erased. He shivers, recalling the warnings, never look back, never accept the coin, never let yourself be the last. But tonight, on this endless road, there is no one else aboard. The bus slows, passing a mirror set in an ornate wooden frame propped at the side of the road. The glass is cloudy, its surface reflecting not the outside world, but the shadowy interior of the bus itself. Arif glances up, and in that mirror he sees not only himself, but a line of faces behind him, faded and indistinct, their eyes hollow, their hands pressed to invisible glass. He looks away, heart pounding. It is as if all the passengers who came before, the vanished drivers, the lost conductors, the old woman, Surya, Ita, are waiting to see who will take the spirit's place. At the next bend, the road splits, one path illuminated by lanterns, the other disappearing into blackness. The woman in white turns toward Arif, her gaze suddenly sharp, almost pleading. It must be you, Arif. You carry the coin. Only you can finish the journey or become what I was. Arif's hand trembles as he clutches the coin. The handprint is nearly gone, but he can feel a cold tension pulsing in his veins, a shadow that is not fully lifted. Pakdarman stares straight ahead. If you do not finish, the bus will circle this road forever, and you... He cannot finish the sentence. They both understand. Whoever fails to return the coin, whoever does not complete the ritual, remains trapped on the midnight route, waving from the window for all eternity. The bus halts at a lonely stop, lanterns swaying in a sudden breeze. The woman in white steps forward, her veil falling to her shoulders, revealing a face that is both beautiful and weary, eyes filled with centuries of longing. You must choose, Arif. Take me to the last stop, or stay and become the last passenger. The choice weighs heavier than the coin in his palm. Outside, the lanterns flicker, and the faces in the mirror begin to fade. Arif closes his eyes, searching for courage in the dark, knowing the curse is not just a story, but a living, endless cycle, always waiting for the next soul to ride the midnight bus. The bus stands motionless beneath a string of lanterns, caught in the hush of a road that doesn't exist on any map. The world feels thinner here, stretched tight between what is real and what is memory. Arif sits with the coin in his lap, trembling as Pakdarman turns off the engine. For a moment, there is nothing but the whisper of wind and the faint ticking of the cooling bus. Then, from the corners of the windows, pale hands begin to appear. At first, it is just a few, thin, gray, withered fingers pressing softly against the glass, as if testing the strength of the barrier. The prints left behind shimmer in the lantern light, spectral and wet. Arif recoils, but the hands do not break through. Instead, they multiply, dozens of them, ghostly palms and splayed fingers crowding every pane. They reach and beckon, silent, desperate for someone to notice them. Pakdarman utters a prayer under his breath, his eyes squeezed shut. Through the misted glass, Arif sees faces, blurred and sorrowful, their mouths moving in voiceless plea. Some are young, others impossibly old. A few Arif recognizes from old photographs in the depot, Surya, Ita, and others lost to the legend. Each soul wears the same expression, a blend of hope and resignation, as if forever reaching for a rescue that never comes. Suddenly the hands at the back window lift in unison, waving slowly, mournfully, like a final farewell to the world they can never return to. The bus fills with a chill that settles in Arif's bones, an aching sense of sadness and inevitability. He understands then, the waving is not meant to frighten. It is a message, a warning, a ritual repeated every time a new soul is caught in the midnight bus's curse. Each wave is a plea for freedom, for remembrance, for the journey to finally end. The woman in white stands beside Arif, watching the hands with glistening eyes. "They cannot leave," she whispers, "not until the coin reaches the last stop. Each one was once like you. Each one failed to finish the journey." Arif, hand, free of the mark but still icy cold, lifts slowly to the window. He finds himself waving back, feeling the invisible pull of those lost souls, so many, stretching back through decades, all trapped in a loop of longing and unfinished business. Pakdarman's voice is barely a whisper. "If we don't end it, we join them." The lanterns outside flicker, and the hands begin to fade, leaving only streaks of mist and longing behind. Arif grips the coin tightly, heart pounding. He looks at the woman in white and nods, understanding at last what must be done. The only way out is to finish the journey, to take the coin where none before him has ever reached, the true last stop, beyond the reach of sorrow and waving hands. The bus sits in restless silence, the air heavy with what remains of the waving hands and the sorrow they carried. Arif stares at the coin in his palm, feeling the imprint of countless others who once clung to the same hope. His own memories feel fragile, slipping away at the edges as the spirit world presses closer. Then the woman in white steps beside him. Her veil falls away completely, revealing a face pale as moonlight, eyes deep with sorrow. She gazes at Arif, not as a curse, but as a soul longing to be known. "Do you want to see what I see?" she whispers, her voice carrying both an offer and a warning. Before Arif can answer, the bus and the lantern-lit road dissolve around him. He is pulled into a whirl of images, memories not his own, flowing through him like the monsoon rain. He finds himself standing in old Jakarta, long before skyscrapers and neon lights. The air is thick with incense, the alleys narrow and alive. He sees a young woman, her, dressed in white, boarding a crowded bus with trembling hands. She clutches the same coin, wrapped in a strip of shroud, her heart pounding with grief. Her husband is gone, her family lost to a fever, and she has nothing left but the promise of reaching a final stop, some place where she might be reunited, or at least find peace. But the ride is endless. The bus crashes, tumbling into darkness, the cries of passengers swallowed by the rain. No one finds her body. The city moves on, forgetting her story as another tragedy among thousands. Yet she remains, her spirit bound to the midnight route, compelled to repeat the journey night after night, always searching for a way home.
Each time someone accepts the coin, she tries to guide them, to finish the ritual she never could. Each time the journey falters and another soul is left behind. Arif feels her anguish, her longing, her exhaustion. He sees other memories, glimpses of those who came after. Surya, Ita, the old conductors, their hopes rising and falling with every failed passage. Their hands reach for freedom, their voices echo in the rain, but all are caught in the same loop of regret and longing. The vision tightens, focusing on the coin, the funeral cloth, the red sigils, the desperate prayer inked in her hand. The message is clear. Return the coin, honor the memory, finish what was begun. Then, as suddenly as it began, Arif is thrown back into his body, slumped in his seat, sweat on his brow. The bus is still, lanterns flickering, the woman in white standing over him, her face more serene than before. "You have seen," she says softly. "You know now what must be done." Arif nods, breathless, the weight of generations pressing down on him. He glances at Pak Darman, who sits silent and pale, as if he too has glimpsed something beyond words. The coin pulses with cold in Arif's hand, but now he clutches it not with fear, but with resolute. For the first time he understands the journey. For the first time he truly wishes to finish it. For her, for himself, and for all those spirits still waiting for release. The road ahead remains shrouded in fog, but Arif no longer feels lost. The memories of the spirit, heavy and luminous, guide his every breath as the bus prepares to move forward toward the last stop that has eluded so many for so long. The lantern-lit road stretches ahead, shimmering with promise and dread. The faces in the windows have faded, and the hands have slipped back into the darkness. But Arif still feels their presence, watchful, waiting, hungry for an ending. Pak Darman rests his trembling hands on the steering wheel. His voice is thin, barely audible. "If you're ready, Arif, now is the time. You can still turn back." Arif shakes his head, gripping the funeral coin tightly. The memories of the spirit still ripple through him, heavy as ocean currents. He knows the cost of failure now, knows that if he falters, the curse will only find another victim, another lonely soul waving from the back window. He stands, legs weak but spirit firm, and faces the woman in white. "I want to finish this," he says quietly, "but I can't do it alone." She gives a gentle nod, sadness and gratitude mingling in her gaze. It takes more than one to break a circle. It takes someone willing to remember and someone brave enough to let go. Pak Darman stands beside Arif, the two men united by fear and resolve. Together they follow the spirit to the back of the bus, where the air feels impossibly cold, the gloom deeper than night. The spirit gestures to a space where no door should exist, but in this world between worlds, anything is possible. A shimmering threshold, faintly aglow, opening onto the unknown. Arif unwraps the coin, holding the cloth with reverence. He turns to Pak Darman, who murmurs an old Javanese prayer, voice shaking with hope and desperation. With the last line spoken, Arif steps forward and places the coin and cloth at the foot of the threshold. The bus trembles, the lanterns flare with sudden brilliance, casting golden ripples across the seats. The spirit bows her head and lays her hand atop Arif's. For a moment, Arif feels all the grief, longing, and regret flow through him, burning and freezing at once. But then, release. The shadow lifts. The cold begins to fade. The bus seems lighter, the air less dense. All around, Arif hears the sighs of countless souls, gratitude, longing, a quiet chorus of peace. The threshold glows brighter. The woman in white steps toward it,
her form growing more transparent, her sorrow easing into acceptance. She looks back at Arif and Pakdarman with a grateful smile. "You have given me freedom," she whispers. "Now remember me and tell others not to forget the lost." She steps through the light, and in an instant the threshold dissolves. The lanterns flicker and die. The bus is once again just a bus, creaking, old, and very real. Pakdarman sinks to the floor, sobbing quietly. Arif stands in stunned silence, staring at his now normal hand. The handprint, the chill, the curse, gone. Outside the windows, the city is returning. The first hint of dawn glimmers on the horizon, washing away the last traces of the midnight road. The curse is broken, the cycle ends, not in terror, but in remembrance. And as the bus rumbles back to life, Arif knows that some stories, if faced with courage, can finally find their ending.
For a long time, the bus sits in stillness, bathed in the pale blush of dawn. The road that moments ago shimmered with ghostly lanterns now looks like any other Jakarta street, littered with puddles and soft debris from the passing storm. The fog has retreated. There are no more hands at the windows, no more faces pressed to the glass. Arif stands in the aisle, swaying with exhaustion, his soul scraped raw by what he has witnessed. Pakdarman sits hunched in the driver's seat, shoulders shaking with quiet sobs. The old man wipes his eyes and looks up, a fragile smile on his lips. "It's over," he whispers, almost not daring to believe it. Arif stares at his hand. Ordinary now, warm, the mark gone. The coin and its funeral cloth have vanished with the spirit. All that remains is memory, and a new emptiness that aches in a different way. But freedom, as Arif soon learns, is never without price. As the morning thickens, Arif finds himself remembering not just his own life, but flashes of lives not his own, snatches of sorrow, longing, and regret from the lost souls who rode the midnight bus before him. He sees the spirit's lonely journey, Surya's pleading eyes, Ita's trembling hands. The burden of their stories now lives inside him, a legacy inherited for having witnessed the end of the curse. When Arif tries to speak, his voice is hoarse. "Did we really break it, Pakdarman?" Pakdarman nods, though his eyes are rimmed red. "We sent her home, but the world forgets so easily, Arif. If no one remembers, if no one tells the story, it could begin again." The day creeps forward. Passengers begin to gather at the next stop, unaware of the night's ordeal. They board the bus, laughing, clutching shopping bags, their faces alive with simple hopes and plans. To them, it is just another morning, just another journey. But for Arif and Pakdarman, every glance in the rearview mirror is weighted with memory. Every empty seat in the back row is haunted by what once was. They exchange a look of understanding, both freed, both marked forever by what they survived. The city reclaims them, but Arif's nights are never quite the same. Sometimes, as sleep hovers near, he feels the brush of phantom fingers or hears a faint voice whispering at the edge of dreams. He holds the memory close, not as a curse, but as a duty, proof that even the lost deserve to be remembered. The price of freedom is remembrance. To forget is to risk repeating the sorrow. To remember is to honor the dead, and perhaps to save the living. As the bus moves forward into the new day, Arif makes a silent promise. He will tell this story. He will keep the legend alive, so no other hand will ever have to wave goodbye from the midnight bus. For days, Arif carries the memory of the ritual and the release, but the city's rhythm soon swallows even the most harrowing dreams. Life presses forward.
The depot fills again with laughter and tired feet. Buses arrive and leave, and dawn follows dusk with comforting predictability. Yet every time Arif sees the last row of an empty bus, a shiver tugs at his spine, a phantom echo of all he has witnessed. Then, on the last night before the holy month, Arif feels a subtle shift in the air as he prepares for one more midnight route. The sky is bruised violet, heavy with rain, and thunder stalks the horizon. Pak Darman is already waiting at the depot, his eyes tired but full of wary hope. The two men exchange a silent nod. There is unfinished business, a sense that the story's last page is yet to be turned. The city grows stranger as midnight draws near. The roads seem longer, the shadows deeper, the streetlights warped by sheets of rain. When Arif and Pak Darman roll out of the depot, the bus is almost empty. They pick up only a handful of passengers, all silent, their faces turned away. Near the end of the route, the rain intensifies. The bus rattles through flooded streets until, at a deserted intersection, all passengers disembark except for Arif and Pak Darman. For a moment, the engine idles. The city beyond the windshield looks like a memory, distant and unreal. Then, as the bus is about to pull away, a chill runs through the aisle. The back door creaks open, though no one touches it, and the air inside grows heavy with old sorrow. For an instant, Arif thinks he sees a woman in white at the rear window, her face blurred by the rain, her hand pressed gently to the glass. But the vision flickers, shivers, and dissolves into the mist outside. Pak Darman glances at Arif, fear and wonder mingling in his gaze. Sometimes spirits return, not because they are cursed, but because they are remembered. Arif nods, his hand unconsciously reaching for his pocket, though the coin and cloth are long gone. The bus lingers at the stop, the world holding its breath. The rain eases. The headlights catch on thousands of tiny droplets, turning them to jewels. For a moment, Arif hears the faintest sound, a soft sigh, a whisper of thanks, lost in the rush of departing storm. Pak Darman smiles, tired but at peace. I think she found her way home. As the bus moves on, the city gradually reappears. The spell of the ghost bus fades, but the memory does not. Arif knows that for as long as he remembers, the last passenger's sorrow will remain honored, and the circle will not close again. He looks out the window one final time. The back row is empty, washed clean by rain, and for the first time in many nights, Arif feels only warmth in his hand. The final night on the ghost bus has ended, but the story lingers, quiet, watchful, waiting for another midnight, another soul who refuses to forget. Morning returns to Jakarta with a gentle grayness, the city blinking through rain-washed windows as if waking from a long, unsettling dream. For Arif, everything feels different, each sound sharper, each color more precious. The burden in his chest is lighter, but the memory of the ghost bus lingers with every pulse of his heart. He walks the familiar streets, hearing the buzz of markets and the call of street vendors. Yet every passing bus, every open doorway seems tinged with a trace of that world between worlds. Sometimes he catches his own reflection in a shop window and wonders if some part of him will always live on the midnight route. Arif visits the depot, now busy with early morning life. He finds Pak Darman quietly sipping sweet coffee, sunlight falling in slants across the battered table. They share a silent understanding. Something extraordinary has passed through them both, and though the journey is over, its echo is forever etched into their lives. In the days that follow, Arif is drawn to the last stop of the old route. There, in the early mist, he finds a new kind of peace. He watches the buses coming and going, passengers stepping on and off, unaware of the story written into the night. He closes his eyes and offers a silent prayer for the woman in white, for Surya, for Ita, for all those lost souls who once waved from the shadowed back window. And one morning, just as the sun rises, Arif glimpses something extraordinary. As the first bus of the day pulls away from the curb, he sees a faint, spectral figure standing at the back window, not trapped, not pleading, but waving one final, gentle farewell. No fear, no sorrow, only release. A warmth floods Arif's hand, as if some invisible bond has finally been broken. He feels the gratitude of all those who waited for the story to end, the hope that no one else will ride in sorrow, waving goodbye through the endless rain. He returns home, the city alive around him, knowing that sometimes the truest hauntings are not curses, but memories, stories that must be honored, pain that must be witnessed so that peace can finally settle in. The last wave goodbye is not a surrender, but a promise, a reminder that the lost can find their way home if someone is brave enough to see them through to the end. And with that, Arif lets go. The bus, the coin, the midnight hands, they belong to the past now. The new day begins, free of ghosts, but full of gratitude. Jakarta's morning is gentle and new, as if the city itself is grateful to have survived another night. The ghosts of the midnight bus have faded into memory, their sorrow at last transformed into peace. Yet every ending leaves a trace, a faint impression in the air, a whisper at the edge of waking. For Arif, life resumes with a different kind of awareness. He greets each day with gratitude, but a part of him is always listening for the echo of footsteps down an empty aisle, for the hush that settles when lanterns are the only light. He returns to work, taking up his post on the morning buses. Passengers laugh, talk, and doze, unaware of the battles fought in the hours before dawn. The city feels brighter now, the roads less heavy. But when Arif glances in the rearview mirror, he sometimes catches a flicker at the edge of vision. A veiled woman, a pale hand pressed to glass, a row of silent faces fading in the morning sun. He never forgets the promise he made. On quiet nights, he sits with Pak Darman beneath the depot's flickering bulbs, sharing stories and warnings with new conductors who join the route. He tells them to respect the last seat, to be wary of coins wrapped in white cloth, to never turn when a cold hand touches their shoulder. And though the curse is broken, some part of it lingers, woven into the city's restless heart. The legend persists, retold and reshaped with each passing year. Some dismiss it as a story for children, a tale to frighten those who ride alone. But Arif knows better. He knows that every story contains a warning, and every curse leaves a shadow. One evening, a young conductor joins the depot, eager and bright-eyed, laughing off the old men's tales. Arif watches him board the midnight bus for his first solo shift, a red string tied loosely around his wrist. He feels a chill, a familiar tug of fate, and wonders if the cycle truly ended, or if it simply waits, silent and patient, for someone new to believe. The bus hisses into the dark, lanterns glowing faintly in the distance. For a moment, Arif glimpses the back window, empty, then not empty, as a soft hand waves in farewell before vanishing in the city's shadow. Somewhere, the last passenger is always waiting. And in Jakarta's endless night, the line between story and truth is never as clear as it seems.